Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Donate PPE for Medical Physics Webinar 4. Today, I am excited to welcome Professor S.D. Sharma, heading the Department of Medical Physics in Bhabha Atomic Research Center, Mumbai. Thank you, sir, for volunteering this lecture. As we all know, Professor Sharma is a legend in medical physics who played an important role in the development of science and technology in India. He is a great leader, visionary, and an eminent scientist who played a very critical role in the development of medical physics, including the formation of the College of Medical Physicists of India. He is also the president of the Association of Medical Physicists of India, who has given countless contributions in the world of medical physics as author, reviewer, faculty, and expert. He will be talking to us on the physical, technical, and radiation safety aspects of proton therapy today. As you all know, this campaign is to invoke awareness on the safety of healthcare workers who are fighting COVID in the front line and to generate support in terms of PPE donations. May I remind you, the word medical physics in the campaign name represents our profession, and Donate PPE is our commitment towards safety as an occupational safety specialist. Please feel free to use the questions tab to type your questions, as the microphones will be muted throughout this webinar. You can also type your questions during any time of the webinar. I thank Professor Sharma once again for volunteering this lecture, irrespective of his busy schedule and other commitments. Dear friends, please join me today in welcoming Professor Sunil Sharma on the stage by giving your full attention. Sir.
Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Thomas, and it will be my pleasure to interact with you and the audience and discuss some of the aspects related to physical, technical, and radiation safety perspectives of the proton beam. In fact, proton beam, particularly in our country, is a new application, but without this would have a lecture which will give some awareness to the people. Other angle. So yes. If you feel all the participants are welcome to just and I will try to answer their queries at the end of this presentation. So as I said, this topic of the today discussion is physical, technical, and radiation safety aspects of proton beam therapy, and I am from Rajiv Thomas has introduced, and he is one of the known person to us from last many years, and I'm under such a noble cause for which I felt when he has invited, I should definitely say yes, and whatever I can have, I will share with you. So now the question is why we are looking for alternatives to energy X-ray, because for all of you may be aware that high energy X-rays are so established. We talk every day, every night, 3D CRT, IMRT, VMAT, many different topics. But in spite of that, why we are looking for something else? This is the real question. So you can see this is the percentage depth dose curve of high energy X-ray. I have purposely not written the energy, but you can guess from the depth and dim exposition what is the energy of this depth dose curve, this X-ray. So ideally, we can divide this curve in two parts. For example, part A and part B. Part A is usually called build-up. Hardly this build-up region is used for any type of clinical application. So except the special cases, and the of the curve, and the second region B, is the exponentially decreasing or descending part of the curve. So these are the two curves. But if you want to analyze this curve further, because we wanted to get the clear idea what is the drawback of this. So for example, I can divide this whole curve in 3-4 different regions. And you can see from here, region 1 is the build-up region, region 2 is the superficial region or shallower depth region, I can say. Region 3 is the actual clinical region, which is where majority of the tumors are lying. For example, if I am dealing with 6 MB X-ray or 15 MB X-ray, tumor depth comes in the range of 5 to 15, 17 or 20 centimeter. And then fourth region is the that is descending part of the curve. So now you see from this curve bound between these dotted lines, left side of the dotted line curve is not useful clinically more generally, and it is true even for the right hand side of the curve. This means only the central part of the curve is used clinically. So if I wanted to treat the patient by this type of characteristic of depth dose of a radiation beam, the left hand side of the curve and right hand side of the curve is undesirable. See, by the way we can look for certain alternative, probably it will be a good choice for clinical application. So now this is another example. Here I have brought this curve, both 15 MB X-ray as well as a spread out Bragg peak of 200 MeV proton beam. This is, I will talk to you what is the meaning of spread out Bragg peak. Just for here for comparison, the once again left hand side the top tower is not very useful, and right hand side this descending part is also not useful. So what we conclude from the visualization of these two curves, initially the build-up part and the initial exponential part of the X-ray is unnecessary radiating the overlying tissues, and similarly after the end of the or after the tail of proton SOBP, the underlying tissue part is also getting unnecessarily radiated. So means if I would like to calculate the integral dose from the proton beam and integral dose from the photon beam, definitely we will have very less integral dose from proton beam and relatively high integral dose from photon beam. So this is the rationale or basics of looking for the charged particles, heavy charged particles and heavy ion for use in radiotherapy. Now even you may be aware, not only X-rays, we have available to us electrons. Sometimes even neutron beams were also used for external beam therapy. Cobalt 60, the gamma rays are also used, are still used in many applications. So if I want to have a comparison among all these beams, we feel that from depth-based distribution point of view, the proton looks to be having a better distribution, because the position of the energy burst in case of the proton can be modulated in such a fashion that it is striking the region of the tumor and sparing at least exit part of the patient body. However, in entry part there are some dose which is unavoidable, it cannot be avoided, but from this comparison we see proton beam is a important beam for application in radiotherapy. Now, after discussing about the proton, we should know something what is the proton. So all of we are aware proton is a subatomic positively charged particle. It was discovered by Rutherford in 1919 when he was conducting an experiment by irradiating nitrogen gas with alpha particles. He observed that this alpha particle irradiation is converting nitrogen into oxygen and then one hydrogen nucleus, and hydrogen nucleus is nothing but proton. So he proposed that proton is a primary particle and the main constituent of the atomic nucleus. But later on it was found that proton is not a primary particle, rather it is comprised of three quarks, 2 up and one down and gluons. For application in radiotherapy, we require protons of energy in the range of 70 to 230 MeV, because if you scan the literature and like to see the historical application of proton, you will find that initially protons were used for treatment of ocular lesions, where energy of about 70 to 80 MeV was sufficient. Now we are trying to treat each and every part of the patient body, so large variety of energy or ranges of energies of protons are required. If, say, for example, I would prefer for a 230 MeV proton, then its range in water is approximately 32 centimeters. So what we understand, this energy may be sufficient to cover all the tumors whatever we come across in our clinical practice. The speed of 230 MeV proton is about 0.6 times of the speed of light. And so this means they are thought to be a relativistic particle at this energy. Moreover, if you are given a proton beam, probably it may not have this such a high energy from the sources, whatever we have the ion generation system. So we require to use a accelerator. Accelerator could be a circular accelerating devices, or it can be a linear accelerator as well, whatever we use in today's time. But there is a problem with linear accelerator, because if I utilize the linear accelerator, the length of the accelerator tube will be very long, probably of the order of 8 to 9 meters if we calculate from the basic electromagnetic theory. So that's why the use of linear accelerator has been ruled out because of its dimension. And more generally, circular accelerating device like cyclotrons and synchrotrons are used for accelerating protons. The protons are now proton therapy facilities are available worldwide for treatment of varieties of cancer. As per my information, about 94 units are working world over with 151 gantry and rotating gantry and 104 fixed gantry, and about 45 proton therapy units are under installation. So we have one unit in India working at the moment, and 2 units are under installation. Proton beam therapy is used for treating variety of cancer cases, including prostate, lung cancer, central nervous system cancers, pediatric tumors, and many more. I have just written something here. Normal tissue receives relatively less dose in proton beam therapy, as we have discussed in the beginning of this lecture, which helps us in reducing the side effect. And more generally, we can say that it is minimizing the chances of secondary malignancies. Probably all of you might be aware, so the incidence of secondary cancer is another problem. If we are having, say, for example, 1 million cancer patients and about 60% of them are treated by radiotherapy, probably 50% of them are coming back as with secondary tumors. So our workload is increasing. We require more resources for handling this type of population of the cancer patients. So when proton helps us in this cause, probably it is a good beam for use in the clinical applications. Cost of proton beam therapy is higher than X-ray, there is no doubt. And but one important thing what we understand here, say for example, if proton beam is able to reduce the morbidity, radiation-induced morbidity and risk associated with the incidence of secondary malignancy, some costs are also saved here, which is a inherent component. So we should also analyze this parameter while comparing the proton therapy as well as X-ray therapy from the costing point of view. Now come to the historical perspective. The Bragg, then he was experimenting or dealing with charged particles and generally heavy charged particles. He found that the energy loss by charged particles are somewhat different. They do not lose their significant energy in the beginning of the medium. Rather, they travel in the medium with loss of a small fraction of their energy at and then ultimately whenever there is to a certain depth, they lose a burst of energy. So when we plot this concept of Bragg, you will find this is the Bragg peak or Debrow's curve for the positively charged heavy ions. And here because the discoverer was Dr. Bragg, that's why the name of this curve was given in his honor as a Bragg peak. We will discuss later about different region of this Bragg peak, but here you can see that the maximum energy of the charged particle is deposited at certain depth inside the medium. This is one of the important advantage of the proton beam and even heavy ions. This, as far as the clinical use of proton is concerned, Dr. Robert Wilson was the first to propose the use of protons for radiation therapy in 1946. And since it was requiring the equipment for delivering the treatment, so which was made available by 50 or 51. So the first patient by proton was treated in the year 1954. Later on, many technological developments has taken in the equipment for accelerating the proton, delivering the radiation by proton beam. So this proton beam therapy has become popular, but its popularity increases from 90s onwards. In the early phases, because of the lack of equipment and technology, even cost also, it was not very popular. So now you can see proton therapy is the talking term, even in our medical physics department in majority of hospitals. Before discussing further characteristics of proton beam, we can see that how proton interacts with medium. So proton beam interacts with medium by different processes. Just a minute, I attach. Sorry, actually, your screen has appeared. It is covering my slide. Okay, I will just go back. Can I close this window? Then it will be okay.
Yes, sir. And you should not open the go to webinar, but you can move it.
Achha, so I'm just okay. I will move it like this.
Or you may click on the slide, then it will be open.
Okay, fine. So yes, fine. So now, are you able to see the slide now?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay, fine. So sorry for interruption. So this is now we will discuss about the interaction of proton with medium. More generally, you can see proton is a charged particle, and when it travels to the medium also comprises atoms and molecules, and all the atoms contains electron cloud as well as nucleus. Electron is also a charged particle, and nucleus is also a charged particle. So majority of interaction of proton beam will be with Coulomb interaction. So Coulomb interaction with electrons. Here in this case, the proton will be attracting the electron, and they will in this interaction, the proton will be transferring a fraction of its energy to electron beam, and so that the atom will be ionized. And now you can see that if we see the ratio of the masses of proton and electron, this comes out to be 1836. That is, proton is 1836 times heavier than electron beam. This means if a proton is traveling inside the medium and it is passing by the outer shell of the atom and transferring energy to the electron, it will not get deflected from its path. It will only transferring a fraction of its energy. Secondly, if it goes close to the nucleus, because of the Coulomb repulsion, it has to change its trajectory, which we will also discuss later. Third item may be, as we have seen in case of electron being a charged particle, when it passes close to the nucleus, there is a change in trajectory, and because of that, there is a production of Bremsstrahlung radiation. But you may be aware that Bremsstrahlung intensity and energy depends on the mass of the projectile particle. So here, the mass of proton is 1836 times higher. So intensity and energy of Bremsstrahlung produced by proton will be less, but there will be a possibility of production of low energy Bremsstrahlung. Now there will be another case of non-elastic nuclear interaction. In this case, the proton will be is captured by nucleus, and the nucleus produces secondary protons, neutrons, maybe alpha particles, deuterons, so such components. So, but the when we talk about the tissue or water equivalent medium, though this is a possibility, but contribution of energy or dose to the patient through this mechanism is very less, which we will also discuss later. So if we summarize the all possible types of interaction of proton with medium, we have 5 different categories. First, inelastic Coulomb scattering with atomic electrons, and this is a major interaction through which proton loses their energy and delivers dose to the tissue. The elastic Coulomb scattering with nucleus, and here primary proton gets deflected from from their trajectory, and recoil nucleus is also produced here. So the outcome of this interaction is change in trajectory of proton, mainly change in trajectory of proton, because nucleus is much heavier than the proton. Non-elastic nuclear interaction or reaction of proton with atomic nucleus, so production of secondary protons, neutrons, and even capture gamma rays because of production of neutrons. So this component will be required to be built for radiation safety point of view. Bremsstrahlung, though produced, but it is not having very significant contribution because of less intensity and lower energy. So now energy loss is an important component for calculation of dose inside the medium. So we want to know how protons are depositing majority of their energy. So here you all might be remembering Bethe-Bloch formula, which was nothing but mass stopping power expressed in terms of the known quantities. Known quantities related to the projectile, known quantities related to the medium through which proton is passing, and including all the contributions of relativistic effects into the consideration. So this is a long equation. I do not want to discuss every component of this, but all of you may be aware this R is the classical electron radius, capital G is the atomic number of the medium, capital A is the atomic weight of the medium, a small z is the atomic number of the projectile, and in this case when we talk about proton, it is equal to 1. The beta is nothing but the ratio of particle velocity to a speed of light, and I is the mean excitation potential of the medium or observing medium. Delta is the density correction effect, which all of we are aware, and C is a cell correction factor. So all these components are taken into account in this equation, and this equation used for calculation of stopping power in many calculations, theoretical calculations. So what we observe from this equation, the mass stopping power is inversely proportional to the charge of the proton, directly proportional to the charge of the proton, and inversely proportional to the velocity of the proton or speed of the proton. It was a classical description, but when relativistic consideration were also brought in, there is a minor change in the equation, but ultimate principle is remains same, that mass stopping power is directly proportional to the charge of the projectile particle and inversely proportional to the square of beta, that is ratio of projectile velocity by speed of light. So 1 by v square will be the guiding component whenever the energy loss phenomena will be discussed for proton beam and other projectile particle. Next parameter is the range. The range of the particle is nothing but, as we know from the proton beam R50, we define that 50% of the range. Same concept and criteria is also used in case of proton beam. The range of the proton beam is nothing but the depth inside the medium, where 50% proton beams are lost or depositing their energy to that extent. So theoretically, we usually calculate CSDA range, that is slowing down approximation range, and here we need the information related to initial kinetic energy of particle, stopping power of the medium, and so this expression. But you know that when proton beams are a monoenergetic proton beam is allowed to pass through the medium, it is no more monoenergetic. It loses energy at certain intervals. So with depth, its energy is changing. So if we have to do a simple calculation, usually we switch over to analytical calculation. So Neuhauser and Zhang, in their famous review paper published in Physics in Medicine Biology in 2005, have given an analytical expression for the range of proton, and this is given here. R is equal to alpha, which is a constant dependent on the characteristic of the material, and P is an exponent which is related to the proton energy, and through which the range of proton can be calculated. So now whatever materials generally be used in radiation dosimetry and all transport of the beam, so this alpha and P values are given in that publication. So here you can see the characteristic of all these materials, like lung substitute, what is their composition and what is the value of alpha and P. So one can calculate the range of proton in this material. High density polystyrene, here also polyethylene, here also we can calculate the range because these alpha P values are given. So similarly for tissue equivalent material like polystyrene, PMA may be generally used for radiation dosimetry. Then bone and other material which is used for radiation shielding or preparing the transport beam transport system. So this parameter is given, and it is possible to calculate the range of proton beams in all these materials when the initial energy of the proton is known. This is a plot of the mass stopping power of the proton and the range of proton beam. So here you can see that initially mass stopping power is showing a increase with increasing energy, because initially when the proton is of very low energy, it gets absorbed by the medium within few layers of the medium itself. But when energy increases, the proton follow the proton loses the energy in a small fractions, as we have seen in Bragg peak, and then so there is a decrease in the stopping power, and ultimately when this process goes on when energy increases. Now as far as the range is concerned, you can see this range in water, and range of proton increases with the energy. So now one important thing here we can see from the Bethe-Bloch formula, the density and electron density of the medium is also very important and plays an important role in the determining the range of the proton. So when we are conducting dosimetric measurement in water and converting to some other medium, we should apply the scaling laws for proton, and we should calculate the Barter equivalent depth for the proton for such type of measurements. Now the multiple Coulomb scattering, as we have discussed in the beginning while discussing the interaction of proton beam with medium. Proton undergoes the Coulomb scattering with nucleus and they get deflected from their trajectory. So this they suffer multiple times while traveling inside the medium, and because of the combined effect of multiple scattering, there is a increase in the penumbra, and the magnitude of this penumbra because of the lateral spread in the proton, this lateral spread in the proton beam, and this increase in penumbra increases with the energy and depth of the medium. So this is the analytical relation given in one of the book, that what is the maximum deflection angle for multiple Coulomb scattering for proton, and one can calculate this. So this theta is 0 is the multiple Coulomb scattering angle, and P is the momentum of the proton, LR is the radiation length, and for butter its value is 36.1 gram per centimeter square for 200 MeV proton, and T is the thickness of the medium. So we can know what is the angle of deflection of proton by this. This is the measured Bragg peaks of different energy protons, and this is basically courtesy of our colleague Dr. Dayanand Sharma from Apollo Proton Cancer Center in Chennai. He has shared this curve with us while discussing their project as in AERB. So I have used his curve for different energy. So it is basically normalized integrated depth dose curve of proton of energy 70 to 226 MeV, which was measured using a Stingray 10 parallel ionization chamber in water. So here you can see when you analyze the each proton beam curve, you will see that there is a initial region, then there is a region which is going close to the Bragg peak, so which we say to be build up region, sub peak region, and peak region. And after the peak region, there is a drastic fall, so we say distal fall of region. So these four parts of these curves needs to be analyzed for understanding the physics behind the nature of this curve. So first part is the build up region. Here you can see that in case of proton, unlike high energy X-ray, the proton start losing its energy from the empty surface of the medium itself, and they produce also delta rays which travel at a certain layer of the material. But while we do actual measurement, probably the existence of delta ray may not be observable, but in principle delta ray production is a possibility, and accordingly build up region initially it goes on increasing slightly because the proton loses a small fraction of their energy, and here the main component of this nature of the curve is the interaction of proton with the atomic electron and some contribution from the nuclear reactions. The next is relative depth dose and flux of proton beam. So relative depth dose of a monoenergetic proton beam we have seen earlier. Here you can see. Now if we compare the flux of proton beam, so ideally flux of proton beam should have not been decreasing like this, because it should have gone up to the same with the same nature up to the end of the range of the proton, but because of the interaction with nuclei of the observing material, there is a slight reduction in the proton beam flux, and ultimately we get the Bragg peak because of the combined effect of all interactions. Sub-peak region and distal fall-off, as I discussed too, the dose gradually increases from surface to peak region due to 1 by V square dependence of the mass stopping power ratio, and this value increases with this rate of loss of energy increases with the increase in depth inside the medium as a proton gets slower velocity. Now 80-20% distal fall of length is also determined for characterizing the proton beam, and mentally we used to use this parameter as the penumbra in case of proton and electron beam. So probably this is the same thing in case of proton beam. Fall of length increases with energy due to increased beam straggling. This is just one example. This is a old public. This is a Bragg peak of 177 MeV proton beam, which is a curve we got in the very beginning when we were starting some basic study with protons. Here you can see all these explanations are given. So because of the mechanism discussed, you can see there is a widening of the proton beam, that is increase in the FWHM of proton beam as we go deeper and deeper inside the medium because of 1/Vs per dependence. The loss of lateral scatter is a function of field dimension. So here now we will discuss later that we deliver the dose to the patient by many different ways, either by use of scattering techniques or pencil beam scanning or other methods. So accordingly, field dimensions changes when we have the complete look of the all technology from beginning till today. So we will see that when the beam aperture is larger, the spread is less, or the peak is more sharply defined. So this is one of the observations we have for proton beam. As we discussed, nuclear interactions, that is non-elastic interaction of proton with medium, produces secondary protons, deuterons, tritrons, helium, alpha particle, then capture gamma rays. So all these are, but their contributions are not very significant. However, if we want accuracy in those calculations, they should be incorporated. Dosimetric impact of nuclear interaction, as we discussed earlier, the multiple Coulomb scattering. So you can see in this picture the bulging out or lateral speed of the proton beam aperture. So that is the main effect of the multiple scattering or nuclear interaction. So once we go deeper and deeper inside the medium, this bulging increases. And so in case of pencil beam scanning technique of dose delivery, the multiple scanning needs to be given a due consideration. Now last aspect B, as I have shown you in the very beginning, that we used to create a spread out Bragg peak, and there are many ways of creating a spread out Bragg peak. Say for example, if we are having a fixed energy accelerator, then we need to degrade the energy of the beam and superimpose or add them together to create a flatter region near the tumor to cover the whole dimension of the tumor. So one of the method is demonstrated here through animation. This is a energy degrader, which is degrading the energy of a monoenergetic proton, and the proton is now creating the resultant of this is nothing but a spread out Bragg peak, and the dimension of Bragg peak is matched with the dimension of the tumor with the margins and all other clinical consideration, and this is used for treating the tumor technologically. So with this discussion now, we need to discuss something about accelerators. So protons are accelerated by a variety of accelerators. We have as on today available to us proton cyclotron as well as proton synchrotron. But new developments are also going on. These compact proton accelerators are under development, and many vendors who are in this business has come forward with their design, but still the compact systems are not available clinically. I have heard that one compact system is installed at some of the hospitals in one of the institution name and country I am not remembering right now, with one gantry, but that is future development. So here in case of cyclotron, IVA is supplying cyclotron based this proton accelerator. Then Sumitomo Varian is also in the business. Then synchrotron is Hitachi, Mitsubishi, Siemens, and all others. Now we should know some basics of the working principles of these accelerators. In case of cyclotron and synchrotron, which are the two major accelerators available for proton accelerating the proton and the proton beam therapy systems. So cyclotron is basically, as you may be aware, is a fixed field system. So it consists of dipole magnets which produces uniform magnetic field, and straight sides are parallel but slightly separated, and that separation RF field is also available in that separation, which provides accelerates the proton. In case of synchrotron, it is circular accelerating ring where the protons are accelerated. I will show you some picture in subsequent slide. In this case, particles injected into the cyclotron moves in a semicircular path and acquire energy at the gaps, which I will show you in the later picture. But different versions of cyclotrons has come: isochronous cyclotron and the synchronous cyclotron. Isochronous cyclotron have a specially designed pole faces, and here they have the particles are focused onto a stable orbit. And this configuration is more generally called fixed focus alternating gradient acceleration system. So then in case of synchrotron, electromagnetic resonant cavities are available to accelerate the particles which moves in the same radius, and the magnetic field strength is increased with increase in the particle energy, and both magnetic and electric fields are synchronized in this accelerator. So this is a schematic view of the cyclotron. Here you can see these are the Ds. They are called Ds, and this in the center there is RF field, and the ions, protons is injected at the center of this cyclotron, and then they are, whenever they are traveling under the influence of the magnetic field, they are acquiring extra energy whenever they cross the gaps between these two Ds. Further illustrated in more explicit way in this picture. So one is the ion source position gap between the D's of the cyclotron. 3 is the trajectory of the proton, and 4 is the exit port of the protons from the cyclotron. In case of synchrotron, the particle or proton circulates in a ring of fixed radius, and the synchrotron is basically fed later. So initially, protons of particular energies are given to the synchrotron, and as the protons are accelerated with each lap, the bending magnet fields ramp up to keep the protons in a beam pipe. The synchrotron can accelerate protons to a range of predefined energy. This means we can get energies of protons from the synchrotron. You can see one is nothing but the linear, which is feeding the proton to the synchrotron. 2 is dipole bending magnets, which keeps the particle in pipe, and the 3 is the accelerating element available at every lap of the synchrotron. A simple comparison of and synchrotron, the size is about 4 meters or even somewhat larger, and when energy has increased. There are two types: rapid cycle and slow cycle. Case of pulse variable, and the size is about 10 meters. In case of the average beam power required is 300 in case of cyclotron, and in case of synchrotron it is 200. This RMS emittance is 10 in case of cyclotron, but it is only 0.2 micrometer in case of synchrotron. repetition rate, because in case of cyclotron it is a fixed field, it is a continuous accelerator. So here it is not up to. In case of synchrotron, it is about 60 hertz. This rapid cycle synchrotron. Duty factor in case of rapid cycle is in pulses, and in case of slow cycle it is about 20%. So these are the basic descriptions about the accelerator. So this is a photograph of the cyclotron, that is proton beam therapy facility. You can see the dimension of the proton beam cyclotron, and this right hand side is showing the beam transport system. So you can guess about the dimension of the cyclotron, this proton beam therapy facility. So still it is very big. Here, through electrolysis, protons are taken from water and injected into the cyclotron. That is a cylindrical structure shown in the figure, which accelerates proton nearly to the speed of light. Protons are guided through the beam line and enters to the different gantry room. So probably you might be aware the particular gantry room or can be operated one at a time. This proton beam cannot be made available simultaneously in different rooms. The protons travel through the beam line guided by electromagnets and components of dipole and quadrupoles up to the treatment room, and in the treatment room they enter to the treatment nozzle, which is nothing but a beam delivering system. So what we need first? We need to the center of ion through the ion source. So here hydrogen gas is heated to a high temperature, then we get plasma, and when it is applied to electrostatic force for stripping the electron from the hydrogen atom, the hydrogen atom is free from the electron, and now we are left with hydrogen nucleus, and this hydrogen nucleus is nothing but proton. So this is given to the cyclotron for acceleration. In this picture you can see this is the in the center of the accelerator. This is the ion source which gives protons to the accelerator. The transport system you have seen in the picture. So dipoles bend and guide the proton beam. Quadrupole focus the proton beam. Steering coils are available which fine tunes the direction of the beam, and the beam profile monitors with beam stops are providing input to the magnets for doing desired functions. This is a photograph of entry. Here you can see in the center of the picture there is a nozzle, and the patient is lying on the table. This nozzle I will discuss to later. This contains a number of components, and this is the basically beam delivery device. So proton therapy is delivered through this, and now imaging systems are also becoming a part of the proton beam therapy accelerator. This is a multi dimension robotic couch which is available to recent day proton therapy. Maneuver the patient movement by many ways from this robotic couch and treatment table. This is a schematic diagram of the nozzle, and here you can see there is a scattering. If by the way the delivery technique is based on double scattering, then probably scatters are available, then dose monitoring systems are available, then collimator systems are available, range shifters are available, even so many components are available, and it in comparison to electron accelerator, that is photon therapy accelerator, we can say it is the treatment head of the proton beam therapy system. It contains many components as we see. So here we do the beam delivery to the patient by many ways: double scattering beam, single scattering, uniform scanning, or pencil beam or spot scanning. So in today's time, the pencil beam scanning systems, as per my knowledge, is very popular. So this allows even intensity modulated proton therapy, but it is a time consuming. So pencil beam scanning system, see our whatever system we have got in India, it also has a pencil beam scanning system. So here in this case for pencil beam scanning, I have got a small video from IBA, and I hope I will show to you all. This is just for having a feeling. Now you can see this is a proton therapy gantry. Patient is lying on the treatment table and the pencil beam is delivering. So here it delivers the treatment slice by slice and voxel by voxel, you can see. So in another way we can say it is a case of slice by slice dose painting, and the treatment is delivered to all the layers in this fashion. So this is just to have some impression about this technique. Now the dynamic pencil beam scanning systems are also made available, and the collimator system for this is available. I have just seen in literature, but I am not aware whether this system is available of the units, but probably it may be available to some of the. As I discussed to you, pencil beam scanning is having a problem of lateral spread. So this collimator dynamic uh, collimation system kind of spread control that speed. This is the beauty of this system. Excuse me, I think now it is okay. So now the last item is dosimetry. So relative dosimetry as well as reference dosimetry. For reference dosimetry, we still follow the recommendations of IATRS 398, and here you know the famous equation. So here we need to know a ionization chamber based dosimetry system can be used, which has got calibrated over 60 quality, and then 398 many people are aware. I thought I will skip, will not discuss much about this component. At the end of this presentation, I just wanted to bring two slides which gives some confidence whether proton beam is suitable for treatment or X-ray, or it is comparable to X-ray. So this debate publication in Red Journal by Inde Licato and colleagues. They have reviewed the records of 174 children uh, which were suffering from the non-metastatic low-grade glioma, and the age of the children were in the range of 2 to 21 years, and mean age was 10 years, and they were delivered the treatment in this 10 years duration. So here, this is no BX, means this non-biopsy patient, then grade 1 and grade 2 glioma as per WHO. So here this is the number of patients of different types of diseases, and here the tumor sites, what percentage of tumor sites was. So here you can see maximum tumor sites 52% is diencephalic or optic pathway. So this data was analyzed, and they found that the uh, overall survival is about 9. It's a very good confidence that proton therapy seems to be a suitable treatment for the case for which this study has been carried out, and I hope similar studies are going on worldwide for different types of cases. So this gives some confidence to the proton therapy institution that yes, we are the institution which has some better equipment which can control certain type of disease, and they can for the such country wherever it is available. Radiation safety aspect, Dr. Thomas, I will take quickly 2-3 more minutes and I will wind up. I hope, is it allowed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Radiation safety aspects, I have discussed that secondary, proton by the nucleus and generation of varieties of particles, and the production of neutrons is one of the major components from radiation safety point for beam transport line. So we have to do accordingly shielding, because the neutrons also generate capture gamma taken care during facility planning and layout. Of overall safety consideration, generally as a regulatory point of view, we discuss about built-in safety as well as operational safety. Built-in safety is available to the accelerator and to the facility, and operational safety has to be, for example, we have to have a this facility design where from operational points of view, we have different types of arrangements for this staff, treatment, post-treatment. This is the layout I have taken from one of the books given here, and basically it is the layout of the MD Anderson Proton Therapy Center of Texas. And this is just for further elaboration. This is the cyclotron room, which from shielding point of view requires very heavy shielding, and because it is the main neutrons are more generally produced here, and high energy gamma capture gamma rays are available, then this beam, and then finally it goes to different gantries from here. So this is the typical layout which was proposed by IBA while suggesting or discussing with us about the proton therapy facility. So I hope I have finished on time and it was having some good component. Thank you very much for your patience listening, and I wish all of you should stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for the impeccable presentation. And sir, there are many questions from the audience. And yeah, before we go to the questions from the audience, sir, what do you think about the future of proton therapy?
You have seen in one clinical example, this example definitely says it has edge over the photon therapy. Though photon therapy is cost effective, but in some specific cases, proton therapy is better than photon therapy. So it has a good future. And you can see from the data also, by June 2019, 94 systems were operational and 45 systems are under installation. This itself speaks that proton therapy has a good future.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. There are many questions from the audience. The first question is the cost of proton therapy more due to the equipment and the installation or due to its operation?
It is, I can say it is combined effect. Equipment is also costly, maintenance is costly, and operation of the accelerator is also costly. So if you combine everything together, the cost of the proton therapy is many orders of magnitude higher than proton therapy facility.
Thank you, sir. The next question is how SSD is measured in case of proton beam therapy, and what is the usual treatment distance?
Yeah, please. What is
Yes,
the
sir.
usual treatment distance? So SSD, probably I have seen in, specifically I am not the user of the proton beam therapy facility, but I have seen in Apollo Cancer Center in Chennai, they have two sensor mounted on the balls, which locates the position of ISO center. And the ISO center length, actually I'm not forgetting, I'm not remembering.
Okay. Sir, another question is what could be the prerequisites for an institution to start uh, proton therapy in the sense of infrastructure and manpower?
Yes, prerequisite that they should have, first of all, from regulatory point of view, site approval, because this is a high energy facility which has the capability of generating lot of neutrons. So site approval is the first aspect. Then they should work out the layout and shielding design of the facility. That is the second step. Third step is the proton therapy system, and whether this system has been thoroughly analyzed by the user, whether it has been approved by regulatory agencies of the country of origin and other similar certification world over. Plus, they also require manpower in terms of medical physicist and RSO. So these are the prerequisites. Plus, they should have all radiation measuring and monitoring system. For example, they require now personal monitoring for X-ray and gamma monitor as well as neutron monitors for personnel. And similarly, for area survey, they require the X-ray and gamma ray monitors as well as neutron survey meters. So for dosimetry, because proton dosimetry is also a complex exercise, they require varieties of the items and systems for dealing with the proton dosimetry. So I think this is the varieties of system, manpower, and safety arrangements are required for starting a proton therapy facility.
Thank you, sir. And there are many questions. I don't think we'll be able to answer all the questions. So, how to choose number of fixed or rotating gantries for proton beam facility?
How to choose?
Number of fixed or rotating gantries.
Number of pixel.
Yeah, number of gantries for PBT facility. I think the user wanted to ask how many units needed, because some of the systems are with a single gantry, some of them are with a two gantry. So how to choose?
Okay, okay. So what I understand it is the how many patients they get. It depends on what type of patient you are going to treat and what is the patient load you have. So it is a futuristic consideration. Accordingly, one can decide about the number of gantry. Plus, each gantry costs heavily, so one has to even think of what is the investment they wanted to have for establishing this facility. So these are all economic, technical, and clinical considerations together determines the number of gantries and design of facility.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And another interesting question is, what is the difference between raster and dynamic spot scanning?
Raster, I feel yeah, I do not have this idea, so I will not like to answer this question. Probably
Okay.
the people who are working they will answer this.
Okay, sir. And what are the type of chambers used for absolute dose measurements?
This 0.6 is the ion chamber. Whatever we use for photon beam, cylindrical ionization chamber can we also use. Even plain parallel ionization chamber, whatever we use for electron beam can also be used here. So as per the recommendation of IEEE 398.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And one more question. There are many questions. So which chamber or survey meter should be used to distinguish between proton, neutron, and gamma rays?
But I don't think we gamma survey meters are not sensitive to neutron. So they may not be accounting for the neutron dose. So that's why I have suggested that we should be having X-ray and gamma survey meter as well as neutron survey meter. So if you use together, you will get the idea about the neutron dose as well as X-ray and gamma dose.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And another interesting question is, any different kind of personal protection dosimeter used in proton facility apart from TLD?
Yes, devices, as I said, it is a personal monitoring device for X, gamma and beta device for neutron. Both are required for persons working in the proton therapy facility.
X-rays are pulsed, and how do you define proton by cyclotron?
I could not hear your question. Please repeat.
Sir, X-rays are pulsed. How you define proton by cyclotron? Is it pulsed or continuous? I think that may be the question asked by the.
Continuous. In case of cyclotron, it is a continuous, but in case of proton, it is pulsed beam. There is a comparison in one of the table.
Okay. Sir, what about the neutron dose limit for the patient?
There is no dose because this irradiation of patient is a case not have any limit for medical. Even neutrons are becoming a advantageous point. Neutrons are generating a number of secondary radiation in the patient, which can be used for treatment of the patient. So, for example, many groups are working to have a PET scanning of the irradiated patients so that their treatment can be verified. So, neutrons are not disadvantageous, they are advantageous as well as disadvantageous.
Okay, and thank you, sir. And there are many more questions, so I will make it very selective.
Yeah.
Can you please explain how proton is distributed when we operate a multiple gantry? So the question is how the proton is distributed when we operate in multiple gantries.
Actually, it is one by one, not at one gantry at a time, not simultaneously.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And there are many questions. I am selecting 2 more questions and we summarize. There is a question, interesting question. Do you think RBO proton is 1.1 or more research is needed on the radiological aspects? So what do you think? That's a question, sir.
This is 1.1. Can you please repeat the question once again?
Excuse me, sir.
Hello.
I cannot.
Just repeat the question. Please repeat the question.
Sir, do you think the RBO proton is 1.1 or it needs more research?
Yes. I don't think so. RB of proton is 1.1, and this is only a small component because when you compare it with the photon beam, it's there is a small advantage because of its much research is required in this area. Many publications, ICRU reports are available in this area. So it is the choice of the person. If they want to reinvestigate something, it is well and good.
Okay. Sir, although there are many more questions from the audience, so we may have to, since the time is already over, so we have to summarize the sessions now. So I thank you once again, sir, for this volunteering this lecture. And I also request all the medical physicists who are present in the audience and for the good questions. And as a conclusion remark, I may also request all the medical physicists to use your expertise to review the technologies and equipments in healthcare. And as a part of the campaign that we are doing, it can be a survey meter or it can be a specific model of linear accelerator with the videos, and share with us that we can upload that one in the foundation's channel in your name. And in case if we are able to generate any funds, so we will be able to utilize those funds for donating PPEs to the deserving healthcare professionals. And this will be another unique way we will be able to help our frontline, supporting our frontline healthcare workers. So thank you, sir, and very much for your time and supporting this campaign, and you are sharing your knowledge. And I thank you all once again for your active participation, and I welcome you all to the future webinars. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.